What's up ninjas, it's Poir giving you my thoughts on Team Ninja's latest game, Wo Long Fallen Dynasty. This TGS, they put out a demo of the game for players on PS5 and Xbox Series S and X to finally try the game out. Sorry PC users, but to sum the game up, it is basically if Nioh 2 and Sekiro had a baby in China and the little fella looked a little bit like Grandpa Ryu, aka from Ninja Gaiden. It is essentially aggressive Nioh is how I would put it. While it lost the complexity and variation that the stance system gave to players from Nioh, it gained Sekiro's parry system alongside new elemental abilities that still keeps the fights interesting and action-packed. With the ability to jump now, it also means the linear grounded exploration of previous titles becomes a lot more vertical with traversing the maps, although the maps themselves still feel more like Nioh and less like Souls games. That is, you don't really appreciate the map that much, it's just more wanting to get the items, kill the enemies, and then fight the boss. I mentioned Sekiro earlier, but the parry itself is kind of just a basic parry called deflect. It's got a quick recovery and you can sort of spam it if you pause a second to not trigger a dodge, which is all done via circle. But it's got way less frames than Sekiro, so it is harder to pull off. Not only that, but the deflect itself hardly builds spirit meter on enemies, and especially bosses. So in that vein, it is not similar to Sekiro. You can't stand there and simply parry to victory when enemies' posture reaches full. You still have to engage in combat. But that is where the true similarity comes through. You're going to want to learn how to deflect as you're going to be using it offensively rather than defensively. The deflect system is nothing more than to continue your onslaught of attacks, much like Ninja Gaiden. It is not a parry and riposte system like Dark Souls, and it's not a posture build system like Sekiro. It is, I'm gonna block you and then keep attacking you mechanic. The thing lending itself to this system is a new mechanic called Spirit Gauge. There is no stamina in this game. Instead, you and enemies have this meter below your health bar that has two sides, orange and blue. The more often you attack with basic attacks and deflect, the blue bar fills up. The more you get hit, block, or use skills or elemental abilities, the bar goes to orange. If you max out the orange bar, you get exhausted as if out of stamina. So it's an interesting choice of, do I spend my bar to spam a bunch of powerful skills but be at risk of getting hit and thus exhausted, or should I build meter up before doing so and keep a balance between to stay safe? Enemies use the same system, although the blue bar is not too apparent for what it benefits for them, but for the most part you're just going to simply be hitting them to orange till you exhaust them, which opens the ability to land a critical hit. And much like Nioh 2, enemies have a burst attack that is unblockable, so you will need to learn how to deflect this or at least dodge them. While parrying is obviously strong, it does take skill and practice to get used to, and I'd argue it could use a couple more trigger frames. Not as much as Sekiro's, but maybe 2 to 3 more frames, if they want average players to benefit from this. There's just no clear tells like Sekiro. Enemies strike faster than Sekiro during mid combos as well, and a big problem is there's way too many multi-hit attacks on nearly every enemy. At the moment, it just doesn't feel better than what Sekiro offered as a mechanic, so if the aim was to be worse than Sekiro's parry, they succeeded. And being tied to circle instead of like block seems very dumb, but otherwise, blocking is effective in this game versus what it was in Nioh, but again, you can't block those red attacks, and we'll see how endgame scaling affects your ability to block. But mixing blocking and parrying should be effective for you. Moving to weapon combat, in the demo you had access to about 4 to 5 weapons. In the full game, I think they said more than 10 weapon types will be available, but this is perhaps the weaker side of the game, as movesets have been streamlined severely from Nioh, to just spamming square for light attacks and triangle for heavy. These will build up your blue bar spirit gauge, however, skills will consume it, but instead of being tied to your person, like skills you unlock as you level up, they are now tied to weapon drops themselves. The loot system makes a return, except now, not only do you have to worry about stats, but also of whether that good drop you got has the skills you want on it. I think this is a mistake. The loot system is very much like Nioh despite them saying it was streamlined. It's not really. I still got dozens of drops while playing, stats have rarities, stars, plus numbers in addition to the stars, individual stat bonuses, and as I said, skills, like weapon skills you use to attack. Similar to Souls, like, Rivers of Blood, Corpse Piler, but Souls doesn't have an RNG loot system for the most part. Here, it just becomes another RNG factor. Now, we didn't have access to a forge or anything like that, so we may be able to switch skills via forging or similar, but this has red flags currently of just being the same as Nioh 2's system. Except now imagine farming for a boss skill, but now also needing to get it on a weapon with good stats. Yikes. And even if you do, most weapons seem to be limited to about 2 to 3 skills per weapon at most. So like I said, weapon complexity is worse than Nioh, so yeah, they're gonna need to pay close attention to player feedback on this one, I think. On the positive side, magic is totally better than previous games. In China mythology, there is the 5 phases, which are different elements: fire, water, earth, metal, and wood. And the spells reflect these, and you're given about 5 each in the demo, which is a ton, allowing for tons of variation from buffs to offensive magic, all of which you can weave in your combat flow as they take up the same spirit gauge resource. But some of the more powerful spells have a condition, and that is attached to another standout feature for this game, which is morale and fortitude. These affect the maps in a unique way that Nioh and Souls games lack. Throughout the map will be various points you can raise flags in, which raise your morale. The higher this is, the more damage you do, and it rewards the player for exploring and putting up more flags to extend your territory. As said, it is also used to unlock the use of those powerful spells. A spell might have a morale of 18, which means you can't use that spell till you plant enough flags in the map to get to morale rank 18. But dying decreases your rank. However, the safety net for this is fortitude, which is just a baseline of morale that you can't go under, which is generally obtained by the bigger nodes in the map. So if you have a fortitude of 15, for example, your morale can't go below 15 no matter how much you die. But enemies also are affected by this system. Above every enemy's head is a morale rank, and some enemies will have a much higher morale rank than you, meaning it'll be harder to defeat them. This encourages you to explore elsewhere till your rank is closer to theirs to have a more even match. So it's a system that makes the content easier for players should they need it, and it still provides the challenge for players by taking on tougher opponents that their power level is not up to yet. And from here, that's kind of where the uniqueness of the game ends, and it just becomes like Nioh. So you have a character creator much like Nioh 2, which is very good, that's a good thing. You can even choose your pronouns now, nice. Guardian spirits are back, which once you build their gauge up and their icon on the right there glows, press triangle plus circle will summon them and use their powerful abilities. The turtle in particular was pretty OP. The level design is similar to Nioh 2, the loot system is similar, music, even though it's in China, has the same kind of feel as Nioh 2, and co-op is in the game as well. And you can even summon AI, which does help better than the Revenant system in Nioh. Interestingly, under the co-op menu, there is a new option, Invade, which could mean PvP in this game, although the feature wasn't available in the demo. I suspect we'll probably get a beta later on about that, but if PvP is in the game, that could be interesting. Who's gonna beat my build? As a wrap up, I wouldn't say Wulong provided a brand new experience some may have hoped for. I wouldn't even call it an upgrade to Nioh 2, it's more of a side grade so far, but it is fun and slightly different than Nioh, so if you're able to, I would try it out before the 26th of September when it ends. Again, it's on PS5, Xbox Series XYZ. As far as negative criticisms go, aside from the loot system, the parry timings, and skills being tied to weapons, there is a constant vignette in the game I wish I could turn off. I didn't see an option in the menu for that, it's kind of distracting. Also, the camera seems shaky in combat. I get they went for a more cinematic approach that way, but with how fast you attack and each attack slightly causes a shake or jitter or turn of the camera, it does kind of ruin the visual experience of the game in my opinion. Also, the lock-on many times locked on to faraway enemies instead of the nearest one. Many of the burst attacks and counters also seem kind of finicky with the elevated levels of the game. Sometimes you would get off the edge or the enemy would get off the edge. There were FPS drops even on performance mode that need to be optimized. I even heard Xbox users had their game crashing on the first load into the level on Reddit, so there is that. There's no dismemberment like in Nioh, so enemies kind of all die the same way. I don't know why they changed that. And personally, the boss fight at the end, as fun as it was, the first phase human fight ended up being just a mash button fight because the boss flinched at every attack. Whereas the second form was much more challenging and in line with Nioh's difficulty. But yeah, the first phase just felt like, what's the point of this phase? So I hope not all human fights turn into a stunlock fiesta, which speaking of which, I tried co-op against the boss and it was just that, a stunlock fiesta. And the second phase melted easily from 3 people bashing it, and we don't even have builds yet, let alone spirits or buffs often, so there is a potential balance problem there that they should look into. And lastly, Button input seemed a bit finicky, namely the heal button on the D-pad and the spirit summon button seemed inconsistent at times. And as I said earlier, I would like a couple more frames on the parry, but everything else I liked, and once you get used to the new mechanics, you do start to appreciate the game more. I just wish the demo had one more level or boss to tackle to get a bigger picture. It's kind of short, but if they can adjust and fix some of those things I mentioned with some feedback, we might be looking at an equally or slightly better game than Nioh 2. So that is my short overview on the demo based off the day one experience. The game releases next year in early 2023. Please leave a like on the video if you can, and comment down below what you guys think of Wo Long based off the demo. Is it everything you wanted, or are you holding out for Ronin? Let me know, and if you want to see guides and builds for Wo Long, don't hesitate to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more Wo Long epicness. Oh, Wo Long!